Yo, what up, Litt Magazine? It's Damion Young, a.k.a. Damizza. You heard some of my hits, Music and Me with Nate Dogg, rest in peace. You may have heard Cry Baby with Snoop Dogg and Mariah. You may have heard I Still Believe with Mariah, Crazy Bone and The Brat. You may have heard Lights Out by West Side Connection featuring Nocturnal. All of that good stuff. We're going to keep bringing it to you.
Okay, let's just start with you just introducing yourself as who you are.
No, let's start this right. Michael Jackson died for our sins.
Okay.
Like, what do I say? No, it's Damion Young, Damizza. What's going on?
All right, sir. As we talked about a couple of days ago, I'm just going to kind of ask you some questions and we'll just kind of go all over the place. But we're going to start off with what your first industry job was.
My first industry job?
Yes.
Wow, like, but how do you mean? Like, professionally or, like, my first, like, just internship or...
Professionally and climbing up that ladder when you were 12 years old?
Well, my very first job at 12 was an internship for Michael Newman, who's a radio consultant now, but he was the night jockey at KHTY in Santa Barbara. And I used to call him a ton of times, and finally he just said, just come down, I'll put you to work in a closet so I don't have to talk to you on the phone. And, you know, he just saw the hustle and the grind in me and just gave me a shot. And, you know, that night I filed all the CDs, alphabetized them, everything. The next day I came in and he said, all right, go back to work in the closet. And I said, I'm already done with the closet. And then he started letting me push buttons on the console. So that's where it really all started.
Why don't you talk about the ladder you climbed while you were at that station?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Why don't you talk about the ladder that you climbed while you were at that station?
Well, it was an interesting climb because being so young, there wasn't much I could really do. I mean, I couldn't drive the van. I couldn't, you know, be responsible for anything really. So, I mean, it started off real small, like little production duties of dubbing tapes or, you know, running weekend shows. And one thing led to another. Then I was doing nights with Michael that I would come in on the weekends and at 6 a.m. and run Casey Kasem's Top 40, and then went from that to doing Saturday night 7 to midnight to spinning live on the radio and being an actual mix show DJ before there were really mix show DJs on the radio. And that was kind of the start of mixing on the radio as a whole. They just really didn't do that. And the way we started that is before they would really let us put turntables in and do the actual mixing, I would record the mixes at home on a DAT and then come in and just, you know, play them off a DAT. And that's where I got the whole idea for like a lot of mixing. From there, became the night jock from 7 to midnight. Then I became the music director. Then I became the assistant program director. Then I became the program director. And then I moved to Power in 97 as a music director, and then just went up the ladder from there.
And all that in how many years?
Gosh, let's see. I started when I was 12 at KHTY. I was the program director by 17, 18, something like that. And then moved to Power when I was 20, 21.
Okay. How did you get into hip-hop?
Now, let's see. I've always been hip-hop. But the problem was the stations that I was working for in Santa Barbara were always rock, alternative, or pop. So it's like it's kind of like I had to get my hip-hop fix on the side. So what I did is I complained about it, because, you know, we were successful with the formats, but it wasn't my thing, so I needed to have some kind of outlet. So I asked if I could do Q104.7 on the weekends, and they said no, because it was still in competition with my day job. So it was almost like here I was, the program director of KHTY, but I'm doing weekends on the crosstown. So they didn't want me to do it, but finally I said, well, I'm going to go do it, so you can either fire me or I can quit, or we can, you know, let me do this. And they said, well, if you change your name and only do overnights, then, you know, can we negotiate that? I said, yeah. So Rooster Rhodes at Q104.7 gave me a job doing weekends there on overnights. And I I just sit there and listen to the music and, get my hip hop fix and be on the radio and stuff like that, and go back to my day job. And I mean, I was always involved in hip hop. Like, I'd go to the Swash and Swap meet and get the new, mixtapes or whatever it was, or go to Firm Cuts in LA and buy the records, or, it was always my passion. I mean, hip hop started for me when I was, I think, 15, when I heard NWA's Gangster Gangster at a friend's house. And it was just like water. I just knew that was what I wanted to do.
I guess it's not really relevant at the moment, but I just want to kind of gain some more background on your hip hop taste. So it was more of a West Coast taste at that point?
Well, it's always been a West Coast taste. I mean, everything just kind of evolved out of that. When I first heard the beats and heard the cadences and the street talking in real terms, it just kind of snowballed from there. And it's what was around me at the time. You're only subject to what you're exposed to. So at the time, it was NWA, and then I saw Compton on Born and Raised in, or I saw Straight Outta Compton. Then I saw DJ Quick's album that said Born and Raised in Compton. And I was like, okay, well then Compton, okay, I'm going to get that. And then I got that, and then I heard AMG, and then I was like, okay, AMG, who's that? Bitch better have my money. And then, kind of went on from there. Then I heard Low Profile, Funky Song, and, Pay Your Dues, and then, WC in the Mad Circle, and all of that kind of stuff. And then Ice-T Colors, and, all of those kind of things. And then it just kind of evolved out of there. And I started hearing other, Too Short, when I started getting into the Bay, and then Mac Dre and Kid Sensation, and then Sir Mix-a-Lot, and then it spread up into Seattle, and then it started going across, and I started, I had heard Rapper's Delight, but it was cool to me, but it wasn't that West Coast bang to me, or those 808, 909 drum sounds and those kind of things that I really gravitated to. Okay. So DOC, then with Texas and Funky Song and the Formula and all of those records, and Digital Underground and Funky Song. Shout out to Money B and A Shock and all of that kind of stuff, and that kind of turned that, and then that introduced me to Tupac, and then Strictly and Apocalypse and all of those kind of records, and I Get Around, and then Criss Cross came along, and then you hear Criss Cross, and that spread you into Atlanta, and then you heard all of the Brat and Jermaine and all of those kind of things, and then they kind of spread up like that. And then Biggie, and it just all just kind of led to the next one.
You we went through the whole alphabet, sir.
Sorry.
Let me tell you, Damion, I was disappointed you didn't mention King T, but it's all good.
Oh, the King T and the Licks, dude, come on. Tila, and, if you want me to go deep on it, I'll even go to the Engineers. We'll talk about Botchek the Terrorist, and we'll talk about DJ Aladdin, we'll talk about KD and Dell, and
Arabian Prince.
We can go into Gorillas in the Mist. We can go into...
Yeah, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. All right, sir.
Boom, boom, ping, ping. Listen to the ill shit that I bring. We can do all of that.
Gorillas Inc. or forget it. I can't even get into it right now. Yeah, Gorillas in the Mist was one of my favorite albums.
Oh yeah.
So, and then Chocolate City was one of my favorite follow-ups.
We can even get Hay in the Middle of the Barn, and freaking all of those type of records that I heard, and all of those kind of things. There was so many records that just came in and influenced us. Like, there's so many that you couldn't condense them into one conversation.
Right. So, real quick, just Realist says that's my man's, by the way, and he's gonna hook me up with Dub C apparently. So, all right.
Dub is a great guy.
Yeah. I met Dub a few times with Cube and Betsy. They used to work with him and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, Dub is one of the realest people that you'll ever meet. He's not a rapper. He's a real dude. He's one of the very few people in this business I can say is just a genuine, real person. Like, he's not on that Hollywood, political, all of that kind of stuff. He keeps his distance from anything that's drama. He's just straightforward. Every time I see him, it's how are you doing? Not what's going on with this or what's up with this. It's how are you doing? How's your grandma? What's going on? He's a good dude.
So off the record, isn't it funny how the industry has that facade that has this all food that doesn't really, the people that don't know? So,
I'm sorry, the facade of what?
the industry that wears the facade, certain individuals, like, I mean, I don't want to mention names, but, some of the most thuggest of all thugs is actually a GQ, gentleman or, something to that effect.
Well, I'm not saying that anybody is not what they represent, because there definitely is that side to some of them. But and Dub C is an authentic dude. I mean, what he says is real. But it's interesting to me. There's, I mean, God, I don't want to. I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody down, but there's people that represent something that they're obviously way far away from, and it's an entertainment thing. And I think that's where it's kind of messed up. Is we're in the entertainment business, we're in the music business, we're in show business. So I mean, it's no different than Dean Martin going out there and faking the fact that he's drunk every night to play a part in a Rat Pack.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's it is what it is.
Right.
I mean, but it's where it gets messed up is people really think that it really has to be on some violent, death row era stuff, where it really that's not where the music business began and where it ended. And a friend of mine last night, Jay, who works with Nocturnal, was telling me, he goes, what's really messed up is in the last 50 years, people started doing this for money. Before that, it wasn't about fame and fortune. It was just about entertaining and sharing your craft. It was artwork.
Right.
And now it's become something that it's not. And I think that's the most important message in all of this, is rap was made to be freedom of expression and to push forward a cause and social change. And that's what NWA was. That's what Chuck D was, or is, excuse me. That's what all of these guys are. And it's sad, because it's like, now if you're not the most thuggish and do this and that and da-da-da-da-da, then you're not, you're not authentic or something. And it's like, dude, so what do you want these rappers to do? Go beat up everybody and end up in jail and not have a career?
Right.
Or get shot and killed? I mean, it's a really sad situation in hip-hop when it comes to that. I mean, hip-hop was supposed to be a form of debate, or a forum for debate, and that's what's really sad about it, is it's gotten away from that. I mean, our country was built on being able to stand on the highest mountain, yell at the top of your lungs what you believe in, and have someone across from the valley on a peak across from you just as high, yelling something that makes your blood boil. But you're supposed to be able to walk to the center of the valley, shake hands, and say, I disagree with you, and then go have a beer. But it's gotten to the point where instead, no, I'm going to walk to the middle of the valley, I'm going to shoot you. Or while you're on the way to the meet me and shake hands, somebody else is going to shoot you.
Right.
One of my homeboys. And it's like, why would I mean, there's an old story, not to get off the subject, but there's an old story about Thomas Jefferson, one of the forefathers of our country, where he got into a bar fight. He was about 19 years old, and he got into a bar fight, and he challenged the guy that he got in a bar fight with to a duel the next day with guns. So the next morning, they show up in a field, and they take their 10 paces, they turn around, and they both shot a bullet in the air. So somewhere between the challenge to a duel and the next morning, they had a conversation, they came to a compromise, and decided to shoot the bullet in the air so that it was a draw, so that nobody died. But there's no compromise anymore.
Right.
Now it's just like, I've got to shoot you,